Welcome to the Orthocast. Today our guest is Paul. He is an Orthodox convert from Europe. He runs a YouTube channel and website called Maniphesto, which is specifically geared towards helping men get together and actually do constructive things that we can build up each other. It's a really great online network. And he's also had people like Jay Dyer and Jonathan Bajeau interviewed on his channel, and me recently. I really enjoyed our interview, so I thought it'd be great to have him on my channel. And so thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Kyle. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And so my first question for you is, what was your upbringing like religiously? What were your early experiences with Christianity? Did you ever have an atheist phase? What was that like for you?
Sure. I was born in a Protestant family. I only call it like old school Pentecostal. So I was actually born and grew up in South Africa, and my father and mother both were incredibly dedicated to this fairly small church related to the Assemblies of God, Pentecostal movement. But we went to church 5 times a week my entire childhood.
Wow.
So it's really intense, really. Sunday mornings, my dad would have like extra first principles Bible studies in our lounge where I'd sit and be a part of them as well for many years. And church was like a really, really big thing. But as I grew older and became a teenager, went to high school, I started noticing like the pull of other parts of life, the, you know, the peer pressure of all the other things that other guys were into, and kind of for a while switched back and forth between this like really Protestant, like very Christian lifestyle kind of thing, very pious and very kind of holier than thou as well, I think, and also evangelizing to my friends. And then I kind of swing over and want to go to parties and be a part of everything going there. So then when I left South Africa, 18 years old, moved to Denmark. Initially I moved to the UK, traveled around a whole lot, was living 9 months in Egypt.
Wow.
And met a Danish woman living in Egypt. And
Interesting.
then I moved to Denmark after some time. She was 9 months in South Africa, and then we moved up to Denmark. And after I came up to Denmark, then kind of like pushed away. Oh yeah, all that like South African stuff is old fashioned and doesn't really make sense, and it's all fairy tales. Stupid people believe in that.
Wow.
So then I became a pretty hardcore atheist, actually.
Wow.
And was an atheist for most of my adult life until today I'm 42, and all the way up until I was about 37 or something like that.
Wow. Dang. So what was that shift for you? Did something happen in your life? Was there something online? Was it living in this very, woke Danish society?
I think basically I'm a pretty extreme person. I kind of like to follow things through to the end.
Yeah.
So, and I take things seriously. I like to live life,
Yeah.
I guess. And so I think I just lived out the worldview and understanding of life and what human beings are to the fullest extent that made sense for me. So I kind of just followed these things, the beliefs that I had to their logical conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a kind of secular atheist agnostic, then I believe that human beings came from evolution. We were the product of an evolutionary process, and there was no life after death. And so I was really interested in power. I thought power was really interesting. So I studied political science. I got very involved in politics. I was actually in the board of one of the large political parties in Denmark, and their kind of main board.
Wow.
Was really involved. Incredibly woke party today. Back then it wasn't that bad. Then realized that politics was just like a big show, and didn't actually, the power was in the bureaucrats. And in corporations. So then I went and got a job in Microsoft, and actually wrote the IT policy for the Social Democrats in Denmark, which was pretty much passed at their conference back then.
Wow.
While I was sitting in this position in Microsoft, was lobbying in Brussels, working in kind of the EU system for some time. Then started working actually for Microsoft Corp in the US. Was coordinating the environmental sustainability strategy for 27 countries. And then realized as well, like, what am I doing? Like, I don't believe in what this, I'm talking this thing, but I'm just become like a suit working for a corporation. And so it kind of felt like the emptiness of that, and like how it was actually killing my soul, having like sold my, my being to just like the stakeholders in Microsoft. So then actually started a spiritual journey. And my spiritual journey was everything but Christianity.
Wow.
And so I went into all of the different stuff there was. Started basically at that time I was doing a lot of rock climbing and would go like to different places in the world, and when I was on business trips, and then go out rock climbing for the weekend or whatever. And then I started doing yoga as kind of like an injury prevention strategy for rock climbing, right? And then the yoga led into all kinds of weird and wonderful new age stuff, which all was like really fluffy and strange, but there was really hot women there, so which was really attractive to me.
Oh my gosh.
So that kind of pulled me into more and more of this weird stuff. And I ended up going into like Tantra and all of these other kind of really alternative systems of thought. That took me into Hinduism a lot, which I kind of just participated in a kind of weird way. Like I accepted things that I've never accepted from Christianity, but I just went into it. Became also then attended Burning Man in the US, this big festival out in Nevada. Became the Burning Man national contact for Denmark. Started a Burning Man festival in Scandinavia together with some Swedish guys, which has today grown to like 5,000-6,000 people.
Oh my.
So it's really involved. So really is living the hedonistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, this was all a part of a spiritual journey where I think I was still trying to hold on to some of the values that I got from a childhood, because I had a great childhood. My parents are very loving and caring towards each other, but I just didn't have Christ. So I was trying to find a new way to implement all of this stuff, right? And at this stage, then I attended. Someone invited me to a men's retreat with a guy called Eli Buren. He was one of the co-teachers with a guy called David Data, who you might have heard of. He'd written a book called The Way of the Superior Man, which I had read. Thought like this was really interesting. It's actually some really Christian principles, but in a kind of modern New Age context somehow.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, so I attended this retreat, and it was just a bunch of men talking about like how to become a better man, basically. And I really noticed that there was something happening there which seemed far more valuable and working compared to all the other stuff that I was doing in my spiritual journey. At this stage, I quit Microsoft because I was just kind of like really living this crazy lifestyle in many ways. And that grew. I met another guy in Sweden who was also into these kinds of questions, but also very liberal and progressive. But we then organized what we called men's research weekends, where we invited people to come and spend a weekend together talking about how we should be men and how should we respond to this crisis in masculinity. And it was, I don't think we had any clear answers, but it was just a very powerful experience to be together with other guys. And so that's I think what's kind of started my journey actually towards the Orthodox faith, which grew because right around the time we did these workshops, and then there was a whole lot of people that responded and wanted to come and join us and meet us. So we invited to the first Nordic men's gathering. 140 guys signed up from 35 different countries, and right at that time Jordan Peterson was kind of exploding onto the scene on YouTube with the whole Bill C-16 over in Canada and stuff like that. This was 2017. And then Jordan Peterson kind of just started speaking about Christianity in a way that kind of built a bridge for me. He was standing very firmly anchored in the scientific paradigm, but he was pointing to something, and I understood what he was pointing at somehow, and that kind of opened my eyes. And so like there was little places in my life where Christ started coming back in, and he kind of was showing up and very gently and very carefully in ways. And so it was small steps. And then I don't know how much of the story you want, but then, the more, anything that I turned towards God and turned towards Jesus, then he just responded with so much more. And so it was a love relationship actually, where at one point I came to a point where I kind of had an understanding what faith was. I had a misunderstanding what faith was. I thought faith was blind, just something that you had to believe in, even though there was no proof for it. But then I realized, like, no, faith is I understood a little bit more. So I kind of prayed this prayer to God, and I said, God, if you are there and you can hear this prayer, then help me to grow in my faith of you, even to grow to the point where I'm completely certain about you. And God responded to that prayer in an incredibly powerful way, and continues to do that in my life, So actually, I'd say God is more real to me than Kyle Orthodox sitting with his blue screen there. In so many ways. So that's just been something that's completely changed everything in my life.
My journey was very similar, where it's like I felt like I took atheism to its logical conclusion. It just leads to hedonism, like nihilism. You know, everything is kind of meaningless, so might as well just do what feels best. And you end up, everything is about power, about will to power, and you found that in maybe politics, really far in your job, but you're ending up just serving like an earthly kingdom versus serving God is so much more fulfilling. I had very similar experiences where it's just like, you know, faith didn't make any sense to me, but just really praying and asking God to guide you, and He will guide you. And so it was Jordan Peterson that helped you a lot, and then was it I heard in the past it was Jonathan Bageot that really bridged that final gap to orthodoxy. So how was that, like hearing Jonathan Bageot and then look like, hey, maybe I should look deeper into this orthodoxy thing?
You know, I only really started listening to Jonathan after I had converted, actually.
Oh, really?
So what really bridged the gap for me was visiting a local Orthodox parish.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured out, like, okay, well, it's definitely Jesus Christ, and I knew from my childhood and from everything that I'd done before, like that, like, okay, you need to be in a church. I'd understood that, like, you know,
Yeah.
Christianity isn't. There was thoughts about, like, because I then started visiting lots of different Protestant churches in Denmark,
Yeah.
but the problem is, like, the guys that I met there were just like not as solid as the guys
Yeah.
who weren't even Christians,
Yeah.
in all the free churches that I met, right? Or the different evangelical. Most of
Yeah.
the Danish, Denmark has a state church, which is Lutheran,
Yeah.
but it's very controlled by the state, so it's become like an LGBT church,
Yeah.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all these free churches with just trying to copy the American kind of really mainline,
Yeah.
mainstream, and they don't have the same resources, so it's just not that good.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that was really frustrating. And
Mm-hmm.
then, just by coincidence, then I just visited an Orthodox church. Someone had told me something about it before.
Really?
And
Mm-hmm.
when I was living in Egypt, I'd actually visited St. Catherine's Monastery at the foot of Mount Sinai,
Mm.
and had an incredibly powerful memory of just seeing a monk there. And he
Yeah.
was walking down the aisle of the church, swinging in a censer, and he was this like mountain of a man with a big beard.
Yeah.
I remember being blown away by just seeing that guy there.
Yeah. The
And it
presence.
only came back to me when I came back into this Orthodox church, and I remembered that
Wow.
experience. And it was a tiny little Orthodox church in the middle of Copenhagen with a Danish priest, and so it was a Danish liturgy. And I just really, he said to me, I had a conversation with him that first time. We were at like an evening service of Vespers.
Mm-hmm.
There was like, 5 people there or something like that, 4 or 5 people there, and I spoke with him, and he said, "Welcome to the best kept secret in Christianity." The
Yeah.
Orthodox, and that was really true. So yeah, so that, and then I really started studying and reading, and
Mm-hmm.
everything I dug into, because I'd come down to, okay, well, Catholicism or Orthodoxy, or maybe some other branch of Protestantism that I don't know about yet.
Yeah.
But the more I dug into it, the more clear it became. Like, just every question I had, the Orthodox could just give much better answers for everything. Like, just
Yeah.
everything made sense. The whole world clicked into place
Mm-hmm.
when I looked at the world through an Orthodox lens. Everything just made sense. And the other answers I got, like, was like, yeah, okay, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Was there any specific like books or anyone online that helped you a lot, or was it just like your local church?
Well, I certainly enjoyed reading. What's the name of there was like this kind of group of Protestants who converted to Orthodoxy. Matthew Gilchrist, I think, or Peter Gilchrist, I think was his name.
Okay.
Uh, Wells in a Dry Land, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and several. I think there's a couple of books by him. I read like the life of Saint Seraphim of Sarov, and
Yeah.
the life of saints. Yeah, there's several lives of saints. Saint Paisios, also really
Yeah.
big impact, like understanding his life. So I think the saints, the testimony of the saints was really, really big,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding their lives. And then, yeah. No, yeah, because I don't think I never really got into the orthosphere so much. Like, I've never listened to Jay Dyer until
Yeah.
very recently, actually,
Wow.
and all these other platforms. So no, and as I said, like, Jonathan, I only started listening to Jonathan later on, after I'd really made that decision. So,
Wow.
um,
That's really
yeah,
awesome.
so I'd say, yeah, it was very much this local parish
Mm-hmm.
that gave me that. Yeah.
That's really awesome. And so now back to focus on Maniphesto. the kind of the reason it seems that you made this is there is kind of like a crisis in the West because there's such an attack on masculinity living in this super woke society, seeing that a lot of people respond very reactionary and they're not actually building things up, versus you have a more constructive approach. So especially living in Denmark, how has that been, like seeing this crisis of masculinity?
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, if you look at like the starting from the school system, from the very youngest ages, like the boys are just struggling. They're just, I think, I can't remember the numbers, but 35-40% of boys are getting diagnosed with ADHD now.
Yeah.
If you take and their results in the school, they're like 30-40% lower than the girls
Yeah.
in their test and exam results throughout the entire school system. If you look at universities now in Denmark, then it's a really long time ago that women are just taking over so many subjects. So like medicine is like 80% women. Psychology is 95% women studying psychology at university here. Priests are now like 80% females, even in the Danish state church. And so
Wow.
they're all, I think, there's 60% Danish priests, but the theology studies even more females. So guys are just like checking out the IT and to a certain extent like some like philosophy. There's still probably a male majority, but almost all the other areas of study, like guys are just leaving. I have a 17-year-old son who's actually, he's done very well academically. He actually won the Danish national championships in mathematics.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
But he dropped out of school. He dropped out of school in as a 17-year-old because he just doesn't feel like he's learning anything there. He just feels like nothing is orientated towards anything that's helping him. So he was working pretty much full time already while he was at school, and now he's working at an IT startup, and so that's what he's just gotten doing full time now. He didn't actually finish just basic high school because he didn't feel it was worth his while. He felt like it was waste. Like in his biology classes, he was told every single week by his biology teacher, the only gender that really matters is the gender that you feel you are. This is his biology teacher teaching him this, right? So that's how far it is. And he went to a Catholic school. It was a private Catholic school.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
So it's like you can imagine what the state schools are like, even more so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that there's a real problem. There's so many guys who just, what's happening is a lot of guys just, their lives aren't launching. There's no one encouraging them. Young girls, they are all the stories that they're read and told are like making them, you have to be strong, you have to be decisive, and so young girls, they're just like go get them. Like, I'm leading a platoon, not a platoon, a group in the Danish Home Guard in the military, and I'd say my strongest soldier, it's a girl, it's a woman. She's just like top motivated. She's not the physically strongest, but like if I look all around at everything that she can do, then she's just super motivated and really like go get him kind of thing, right? So and right now they're talking in Denmark, like either we're going to have like a very, very professional army, or they're going to make conscription male and female exactly the same. Like all females have to be treated as if they're men.
Yeah.
And as a result, the masculinity is bad for men but good for women, and femininity is like, we don't even understand what that is anymore, right? Like, it's kind of like,
and masculinity is demonized so much, and that paired with a lot of men just being able to check out because of all these things like anime and video games and porn, it's really hard for men to get motivated, because I think men need something to do. They want to provide, and that role has been diminished in society. And so now it's like only the top like 10% of men, the really, really high achievers, are succeeding. They're getting all the women, versus now there's just a huge disparity among men, and men need something to motivate them. And that's why I think the church is so good, especially Orthodoxy, since I think there's a reason why men love Orthodoxy so much, is because all the other forms of Christianity have been feminized so much. It's over emotional. It's you have women pastors, women priests, versus in Orthodoxy we have the male priesthood that Christ gave us, and we have this tradition, this very boot camp basically for men to get their life back on track. And so I think Orthodoxy and having true masculinity go so well together, because we live in such a, feminized culture.
Yeah. So yeah, you asked about Maniphesto's approach and how we're doing that, and so it's been an interesting journey because I started Maniphesto before as a Christian, right? And
Yeah.
when I was in a whole lot of different things, and I still have a lot of guys who are still with me, even though they're not actually still today. Now I'd say we're like 1/3 of the guys are Christians, and probably quite a few Orthodox guys in there. Some, but a lot of guys are not. But I don't want to be competing with the church. But I also want to offer something of real value that actually is changing people's lives. So what we do is we have a network of online groups that are meeting regularly. And what they do is they set some goals for themselves that they want to achieve over the next period of time. They decide on some specific habits that they would like to build in their life. And obviously for Orthodox guys, this is building a prayer habit and stuff like that. But a lot of the guys who are coming in are kind of just on the outskirts of the church, maybe haven't really found that community yet, haven't been able to fully take that step as well. So they're trying to build stability in their life. And then they work on accountability with each other. So all of their meetings are about keeping each other accountable for the things that they've said. You set your own goals, and then you have a bunch of people that are checking up with you to make sure, can you actually, go the mile and continue down the course and hold on to the things. And, then what a lot of people find is that the things that they thought they wanted didn't want, and they have to change, and they have to have a group of people to discuss that with as well and figure out like where they want to go to, and support each other in the journey of kind of, being able to build a stable base and foundation for themselves.
Yeah. And this is something that is global. Like anyone can join in the US, Australia, Europe.
Yeah. So I'm working together with Father Michael Butler, who is an Orthodox priest living in Detroit. And he's leading one of our groups. We have another group launching he'll be launching another group next month. And we have groups in all time zones as well. So, we also have European groups that meet earlier in the day or in the morning, and we have Americans then joining those groups as well sometimes. So yeah, it's all, we're probably, we had an Australian guy. We have right now 3 guys in Australia, where one of them was getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to join a group. Then he decided that was a little bit too intense, so he went for another group instead. But yeah, we do have people throughout. We have people in Africa, Australia, all like 4 continents, I would say, actually, all over the world. And and then all the groups, what we do insist though is that you're in a group where you can reasonably meet up with at least one other man in the group at least once a year, because we want people to meet in person. And we run boot camps then. I live on a homestead out in the Danish countryside with there's piles of like forests and ocean around here. And so actually just this weekend, I've had one of the groups here where all the members of the group came here, and we had a super intense boot camp when we're out. Like, basically, I've taken like the most intense military training that I've been doing myself and created a civilian version of that to.
That's awesome.
Tough program where they get tired and hungry and frustrated. We are out walking and navigating in rough terrain with no lights and dark and rainy until 4:30 in the morning, something like that. And then they get like 3 hours of sleep, and then we wake them up again, and it starts again. And, learning a whole lot of different like bushcraft and survival skills and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think men need that. Men need that sense of brotherhood and accountability. Going through something like that together, it really helps with that bonding. And also, I like how you're talking about setting goals, because a lot of people don't even do that at all. And it's really good to have an objective, talk about the key results, like the actual thing that you want to achieve, like put a number on it so you can see if I succeeded or not. And then you can make a plan to actually do that. Because a lot of people have these like vague plans, like, work out more. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Like, I'm going to work out 3 times a week for the next 3 months. Like, you need to see, it needs to be quantifiable to see like if you can actually achieve that. And I think the way that men's brains works is we need that structure. We need something to actually go and do. And so that's so great that Maniphesto is like filling this niche, and it's growing into something really great. Are you seeing a lot of growth in this?
I mean, it's not exploding, I would say. I don't do any marketing. I just basically, like, I have this YouTube channel. I've been running it for some time, but I just have the conversations on it that interest me. So I've been using it kind of like my goal with it was to not be so worried about what other people, want to hear, but just I've used it to talk to people. Like, I've been able to have talk conversations with Jonathan Peugeot and Jay
Yeah.
Dyer and these guys, just to explore anything that like interests me. I go and explore it there. And yeah, I even had Jonathan coming here to Denmark as well, which was incredibly valuable. But I don't have any advertising. I don't do
Yeah.
any kind of, marketing promotion. So it's very much word of mouth that it's got out. And to tell you the truth, like, having this conversation with you, this is one of the first time I'm like going onto another channel and talking about it.
Yeah.
I try and put it into my own videos sometimes, but I just my time in Microsoft kind of like really scared me off, or like I saw the downside of focusing too much on money.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I've yeah, and I've been also financially careful enough that I haven't been able to, like, Maniphesto. It is my full-time job. I spend all my time on it.
Yeah.
But I have a good financial foundation from my previous career.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone should go check it out. I'll have the link below. But
Yeah.
my next question is, what do you think are the best books on masculinity and then the best books on orthodoxy that you think every guy should read?
Well, I can start with what's really inspiring me right now.
Yeah.
Because this was actually on my conversation with Jay Dyer. I asked him about, like, well, how do you kind of, what's a good guide to know how to be a masculine man from the Orthodox faith?
Yeah.
And so he just said to me, well, it all depends on if you actually believe the Genesis story or not.
Yeah.
And then he held up the book of Father Seraphim Rose, Creation, Early Man, and Genesis, Creation, Early Man, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Father Seraphim Rose. And I was like, okay, well, I've read some quotes from that book, some passages, but I've never read the whole book. So I was like, okay, great, I'm going to go. So I went and bought the book and I read it, and it just blew my mind. It actually blew my mind. I was actually shocked at how much my understanding of what human beings are was still influenced by, the secular, mainstream, scientific, materialist paradigm, even after I've been Orthodox for such a long time. Yeah. So I actually go and had to repent to my priest about this.
Wow.
And then after that, I was like, okay, well, I got to read some more from this guy. So then I went and read Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future.
Yeah.
And that also just was like, wow, okay, this is intense. And then I went and read Nihilism after that. And that just put a frame around so many things that I see in all the men that I'm working with as well. Like, nihilism, it like Father Seraphim Rose, like, we breathe it in with the air that we have in our society today. It infects all of us. If you don't think that you're influenced by the nihilistic paradigm, like, you're just not looking deep enough. Like, it's inside of us. So it really helps to become aware of these foundational assumptions that we have about reality and how they influence us. So Father Seraphim Rose, those works absolutely I would start with.
Yeah. Reading Father Seraphim Rose was so amazing for me. Seeing this very pious and very knowledgeable man who's actually living out the faith in modern times, like, that shows that the Orthodox Church still has these amazing fruits, these amazing saints ever producing. You also mentioned Saint Paisios. That is so great, and that's what we're all thriving to be. Is like that's the example. Is we should thrive towards that, and they were like thriving towards Christ. So it's so great, and like having the saints with us. I mean, same with like this brotherhood that you're talking about. We have like a relationship with God and the saints in heaven. So that's what I love about Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, it's so much. It's like, it's so clear in the Orthodox faith how we're members of a kingdom which is not of this world.
Yes.
And everything that we do is not orientated towards this world. We're not, when I first read this, I was like a little bit shocked about it. It's like, we're not trying to help people's problems. It's like, that's not what we're aiming to do. Actually, what we're aiming to do is to earn our salvation, to purify our hearts, to become united with God. That is the purpose of the Orthodox life. It's not, we're not trying to solve people's problems or help them with, whatever it is that they're suffering with. Like, actually, we recognize, like, suffering is a part of what can actually join us with Christ as well.
Exactly.
So it's a really radical shift that happens. And so it's helped me a lot with, or it's difficult with Maniphesto as well sometimes, because it's like, if people don't have their basic stuff in their life in order, then they're also not able to come to the point where they can actually focus their attention on the really important questions as well, right?
Exactly.
But I really see that, like, the influence that happens in Maniphesto, it's more just from like the camaraderie and togetherness and connection with other guys, being honest with each other. A lot of guys, like, they walk around and they just have so many they have so much resistance to sharing with other guys about the problems that they have, and they might actually tell, a lot. Even in my own personal life, I can tell you that, up until I was like 32 years old, all of my problems that I had, I would just share them with girls, with like the females in my life, my girlfriend or just other women. I'd have like a female confidant or something like that, and they gave me a lot of sympathy.
Yes.
But the sympathy actually just made me, kind of like not do anything about my problems, right? And I didn't see I could put the blame on other people. But when I told guys about my problems, then they would be like, well, what are you going to do to fix yourself? So you're not going to continue doing that anymore, right? That challenged me to become a better man.
Yeah.
And so when I started doing that, that's when a lot of things. So most of the guys, when they come into these groups, they realize like, oh, there's all these guys, we're all battling with the same stuff. There's like 4 or 5 problems that pretty much all guys are struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody has like 1 to 5 of them. and it's just so helpful to have. It's like, I don't, because then people they start sharing this stuff on Facebook or whatever it is, right? That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
You need to have like a closed knit group of people that you have confidence in. You can talk about these things with, not just like the public. It's about being vulnerable with everybody and everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's what brings us as greatest happiness, is having these very deep relationships with other guys. Like, you need a best friend, like someone that you can rely on, and that's why it's so bad that there's, male loneliness is shooting up, because people are stuck with, just playing video games and thinking like that's friendship with those people, or they're not actually like doing things and connecting with other guys and being honest about their problems. But that's, so necessary for healing. And so
even just guys like listening to self-help or even Orthodox videos on YouTube, but not acting on it as well, right? Like it's just as much of a trap.
Yeah.
I even noticed myself. So since the beginning of this year, since the 1st of January, I traded in my smartphone for a dumb phone. I can't show it to you right now because I don't have it. But oh wait, it's down here. So I have like this little push button phone now that's could just send SMSs and phone people, right? And because I noticed like I'd just spend all my time listening to podcasts and stuff like that when I have free time. I'd be going around fixing something on the farm here, but then I'd be listening to something, and then after I'd been working for 2 hours, I'd go into my family and I'd notice like I'm irritable and I'm not really present with them.
Yeah.
And so I realized like I'm not actually doing the work properly. I'm listening to all this stuff that's like so inspiring in some ways, but it's all like it's up here in my mind. So it's about actually doing the stuff, and to do that I need other guys locally who I'm connecting to and supporting.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the best advice, is just you need to be present in the moment and focus like on in real life things. I've, dealt with this, being burnt out, trying to have too many doors open. But Orthodoxy is all about simplicity, about like focusing on the people really around you. And I try to give the advice, like people should actually go to their local divine liturgy. That's where you can meet a lot of other guys who are going through the same things, and you can start doing things together, like having hikes, like having book clubs, or it can be through something like Maniphesto. It's just men need to take action.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing, I think a lot, if I have to boil it really down, I think we're teaching guys the basic skills of making good male friendships that are, straight, honest, direct. Because a lot of guys, they'll be like, oh yeah, all the guys in my church, they're like, you can't have these conversations with them. You can't. And it's like, they're probably missing the exact same things that you are, that they don't know how to bridge it either. Because we've been estranged from each other. We've been told that masculinity is toxic, and we project all of our issues onto each other instead. And we compete with each other for the few women that are there as well, right? And so that's basically what we're doing, is I'm just teaching guys, because I needed to learn it myself at one stage. I had forgotten. I was just competing with guys and using women to kind of feel like I'm okay, right? And I really realized, like, even as a married man today, if I have a problem that I don't know how to deal with, I tell my men's group about it. And I have one guy in the men's group especially who, the really difficult stuff, I talk to him about it, right? And I'll do that long before I talk to my wife, because I want to have sorted out all my issues when I go to my wife to talk about something. He doesn't want to meet a guy who's like, confused and doesn't know where he's going, doesn't know how to deal with the situation. She wants to be able to lean on me, not me to be leaning on her.
Exactly. And I think that's really good advice. I think this is a great place to end it. I hope we have many more conversations in the future. Definitely go check out his website and YouTube channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yep. God bless.